12 enormous floods ever caught on camera. The number of deaths from natural disasters can be highly variable from year to year. Some years pass with very few deaths before a large disaster event claims many lives. Today we will be showing you 12 enormous floods ever caught on camera. So get ready to experience the fear and gather the best knowledge about these floods. 1. While most floods can be considered natural disasters, the 1938 flood of the Yellow River in China was a deliberate act of warfare. The Chinese had been fighting a brutal Japanese invasion, one that threatened to bring an end to thousands of years of Chinese history. As a last-ditch effort, Commander Chiang Kai-shek ordered the destruction of the river's dike system. This unleashed a wave of floodwaters that would spread across the country for 9 years. The act is believed to be the most devastating environmental attack of all time, both in terms of environmental destruction and loss of human life. 4 million people were forced from their homes as the flood spread. The water was not contained until 1947, years after the Japanese were defeated. The Chinese government denied their involvement in the flooding until news broke in 1945. 2. Blizzards are bad enough, but when a heavy volume of snow melts causing flooding, that is a deadly 1-2 punch. Such was the case in early 1996, when that combination overwhelmed many states in eastern United States. More than 3 inches of rain fell in 24 hours at Williamsport, Pennsylvania. That rainfall led to some of the worst flooding in the Keystone State since Hurricane Agnes 24 years earlier. 3. It had been bad enough that the Florida real estate market had collapsed in the mid-1920s. But then one of the worst storms ever blasted Florida and the Atlantic coast on September 18, 1926. The tempest brought deadly storm surge and flooding to the hurricane-prone area. A tidal wave swept over Miami Beach and Biscayne Bay, and boats were scattered all over the city. The storm left 372 people dead and up to 6,000 injured. There had been some advance warning of the approaching hurricane from reports from ships in the area, but in 1926, few people had radios and there were very few methods to pass along the warning to the population. Property damage was the highest in U.S. history to that point. 4. In July 2012, heavy rains caused floods in Assam, and it was one of the worst disasters that the state had seen in over a decade. The monsoon rains started earlier and heavier than the previous year. The state got about 528 millimeters of rain, which was 28% more than its average annual rainfall. Because of the flooding, there were 43 breaches reported in the Brahmaputra banks and 14 breaches on the banks of its tributaries. Many of the important rail links connecting Assam and the nearby states were also affected. The floods also inundated large parts of the Kaziranga National Park and affected its resident animals severely. It's estimated that over 560 animals died, including 14 rhinos. 5. While Mumbai witnesses heavy rains every year, July 2005 will remain etched in the city's collective memory. On July 26, 2005, Mumbai received about 944 millimeters rain in just 24 hours, a 100-year record. The local train stopped operations overnight, roads turned into rivers, and the city had to bear a direct loss of rupees 450 crore. The city's proximity to the sea, combined with poor water management by the authorities, reportedly led the situation to worsen as waterlogged roads turned into rivers and power supply was severely affected. However, Good Samaritans and charitable organizations poured out onto the streets with food, supplies, and other assistance, bringing back residents' faith in that much-abused term, the spirit of Mumbai, and helping the situation from spinning further out of control. 6. About 70 to 75% of China's floods are thanks to Yangtze River, the longest river in the country. The 1930s were a particularly hard time for the people living on the shores of the Yangtze, as the decade had seen 2 of the worst floods in human history. While not quite as severe as the 1931 flood, the terrors of that event were still fresh when the 1935 flood struck. Millions of people would suffer at the hands of the Yangtze, and at least 145,000 people lost their lives. Disease and famine followed the water and were responsible for much of the carnage. 7. Back-to-back hurricanes led to extensive floods on the East Coast in August 1955. At the time, Hurricane Diane, the second of the 2 storms to strike in the region, was the costliest storm on record. The heaviest rain fell in northern Virginia, with more than 5 inches inundating the region in 24 hours. More than 200 dams in New England either partially or completely failed. 8. The massive flood that engulfed half of the eastern United States, almost biblical in scope, started with snow melt, then a downpour on March 11 that did not relent for 14 days. The tiny town of Pinkham Notch recorded rainfall of more than 22 inches over the period. Rivers throughout New England stayed overflowed. At the Vernon Dam in Vermont, floodwaters from the Connecticut River rose 19 feet above the dam. About 200 people lost their lives, and 14,000 were made homeless. Because of the disaster, Congress passed the Flood Control Act of 1936, which President Franklin Roosevelt then signed. The act empowered the Army Corps of Engineers to build levees, flood walls, and reservoirs. 9. The rainstorm in Texas in 1921 is considered the greatest such event in the history of the Lone Star State. The storm entered the region as a hurricane in Mexico and brought torrential rain in Texas as it moved in a northeasterly direction. In its path, 215 people were killed. The rainfall left up to 9 feet of water in downtown San Antonio. In the town of Taylor, almost 24 inches of rain fell in 35 hours, as measured at the U.S. Weather Bureau station on September 9 and 10. Number 10. By the time Sandy reached the New York metropolitan area on October 29, 2012, it had been downgraded to a superstorm from a hurricane. Yet, it would turn out to be one of the costliest weather events in U.S. history. Subway service in New York City was knocked out, and multi-million-dollar homes at the Jersey Shore were destroyed. The destructive force of the storm and loss of life ratcheted up the urgency level for preparing shoreline defenses along the New Jersey coast, as well as New York City, to address the reality that stronger storms are in the region's future because of climate change. Number 11. Heavy thunderstorms struck the Rapid City region of South Dakota on June 9, 1972, and because of strong easterly winds, the storm system stayed over the area. Floodwater from various creeks emptied into Rapid Creek, swelling that body of water to more than 300 times its regular volume. Number 12. People living along the Mississippi River know it floods often, and they have learned to live with it. The Great Mississippi River flood engulfed 16 million acres and displaced about 640,000 people from Illinois to Louisiana. In Vicksburg, Mississippi, the river swelled to 80 miles wide. To address the disaster, Congress passed the Mississippi Flood Control Act, which put great stress on construction in the Mississippi Delta levee camps, despite warnings from the NAACP about harsh living conditions and mistreatment of black laborers within the camps. Have you ever experienced a flood, or are you scared of floods? Let us know in the comment section below. Do like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more such content.